Hello and welcome back into another edition of Prom Sports World, coming to you on a Friday, and a very happy Friday to everyone here checking us out as we break down the Minnesota Vikings today on the Prime Sports World. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast as we go live basically every single day, bringing you guys the most up-to-date content. Also, if you do happen to miss us live, we have a plethora of streaming options there on the chat. So check that out over there. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm, of course, your host, David. I'm playing Huffman. Right there is my co-host, Mr. TJ Hopkins. Happy Friday, my friend. How are you?
It's Friday.
It is Friday. I went to the gym earlier and looked at what I canceled my membership, and I looked at the place I used to spend 5 days a week at every single week, and I was a little sad when I left. I don't know if you know what's going on, but I put in the group chat that I have to get a new gym. The gym I was going to here in Fort Wayne has decided that they're removing all of the basketball courts, which is like, this was like a mecca for basketball. It was like one of the best basketball courts places in the whole state. They decided to remove all of the basketball courts and replace them with pickleball.
That's racist.
It is racist. It's right. It's racist. I don't play pickleball. I'm like 40 years too young for pickleball. And I don't use really any of the other features of the gym. So I canceled my membership. Here's some other BS. Because I didn't cancel my gym membership before the 5th of July, they didn't start tearing up the basketball courts until after that. They're still going to charge me for August.
That business. I ain't saying it's right. I'm just saying,
It's
how they
tough.
operate. Yeah, it's just
Well, I got a little bit of like I got a little bit back from him, so it's all good. But back to the point of the show. We're not here to talk about my gym and my woes here at Fort Wayne. We're here to talk about the Minnesota Vikings and break down their season preview. Let's just jump right into it and let's talk a little bit about last season before we start talking about this season and talk about a little bit about last season and was last season a fluke in your opinion? Obviously, they had one of the lowest lowest point differential of any team with what was it, 13 wins in the history of the league.
yep.
Um,
The point that they had a negative. Didn't they have a negative point
they did
differential?
have a point. They did have a negative point differential. They only lost 4 games last season. They finished with a 13-4 record, but they won a bunch of these games, kind of just pulling the rabbit out of the hat. And they did have a negative point differential for a team that won 13 games. A team that was the season before finished with a record of 8-9, ended up missing the playoffs. They lost a lot of close games that season too. Do you consider what happened last season with the Minnesota Vikings a fluke? The season before that, they were 7-9.
Um,
So kind of the outlier season was the season they had last year. And obviously, we talked about won a couple of games, and they got blown out in a couple really like the Packers blew them out 41-17. The Dallas Cowboys blew them out to 40-3. The Eagles blew them out 24-17. They were getting the doors blown off of them by the Indianapolis Colts. End up coming back and winning that game. Do you consider what they did last season a fluke?
nah, I think the matchup against the Giants, it was just a styles make fights kind of matchup, right? You don't what you call it, like that game against the Colts. I think is a perfect example. I don't care who you are in the NFL. I don't care how good you are, how bad you are. You don't blow a 31 point lead.
I think it was 30. Yeah, well, I mean,
33, whatever,
whatever the number
30,
was.
30 plus. You were up 30 before halftime, right? I don't care how good you are, how
halftime. I mean,
like I don't care how good you are, how bad you are. You don't blow that lead, or you don't come back from that lead. Like usually when you down 30, hey, it's game over. GG. See you next week. They fought back and they came back. So if you want to call that a fluke, more power to you. Go ahead. I don't. I'm not gonna hold it against you. Kirk Cousins and them, like they were. What was their record in one score games last year? Because they had a bunch of them.
I think they were 8-1 in one score games
All
last
right,
season.
8-1 in one score games. Right?
Let me double check that. But yeah, I think it was something like that. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11-0 in one score.
11-0 in one score game. One of them I know for a fact. We know because we talked about it ad nauseum. The first game against the Bears, you got Nasimba Webster trying to be a hero against this old team. He catches the ball. All we need is a first down, get out of bounds, keep the drive going. He makes his defender miss, gets the first down, but he ends up getting stripped. Game over right there. We lose 20. They went 21-16 or whatever the hell the final score.
29-22.
29-22. All right, fine. Wait, what? 29-22.
Yeah, that was the final score, 29-22.
Fine. And then does luck have to go your way in situations like that? Yeah. Like what? That's the nature of the beast. I just think last season, again, the matchup against the Giants, where the Vikings, like their weaknesses literally just showed. They line was suspect. They had nobody to stop Dexter Lawrence. He lived in the backfield. Like we talked about the final play, right? Final play, it's like 4th and 16 or 4th and 12, whatever. And because
they don't even run a route that would even get them enough yards for the first down. Because they didn't have enough protection. Like
they have enough. Kirk Cousins had to check down, and dude had to fucking, excuse my language, pray for a miracle to get the first. And we already know that was over, right? Dexter Lawrence lived in the backfield, and on the opposite side, we saw Saquon Barkley just get whatever he wanted.
And we're going to talk about them in the trenches here a little bit later in the show. Not that much later, but soon. But yeah, I think that a lot of the people that want to talk about Minnesota, because this is like a recurring narrative, a rhetoric that people want to talk about, Minnesota being kind of a fluke. Their victories in their season last season was a little bit fluky. I don't really subscribe to that. I mean, it takes a lot to win one score games, and yes, their point differential was a negative point differential for a team that won 13 games, but I mean, to look at the teams they lost to. I mean, they lost to a Green Bay Packers team that was surging. They beat a lot. They lost to a Lions team that was on like a 6-game winning streak. They lost to a Dallas team in Dallas, this game was in Minnesota, but Dallas was a good football team. And they lost to Philly and Philly, team that ended up going to the Super Bowl, losing to the Kansas City Chiefs. Like this was a good Minnesota Vikings team. The fact that they won all these close matchups just talks about like the resilience of the Minnesota Vikings, how they played, that never quit, never give up, never really out of a game because of the talent of Kirk Cousins and some of those offensive weapons out there. I will not say that last season was a fluke, but it is eyebrow raising.
Like I think Kirk Cousins is the only guy that can put up the numbers he's put up over the duration of his career and be labeled, you can't win with this guy.
Yeah. I mean, the season 2 years ago, he would put up numbers. I think he led the league in passing yards. He was good enough to be arguably the league MVP. I refuse to label last season as a fluke. Let's talk about them. Let's swing into this season. Let's talk about them in the trenches. As you kind of touched on a little bit there, they got manhandled by the New York Football Giants, both at the offensive line and defensive line. Do you think they've done enough or anything really to address those considered concerns, where they basically got manhandled by the New York Giants team, by Saquon Barkley on offense and then by Dexter Lawrence on defense? Or are they just expecting these guys to just get better one season from last season to this season?
I think the issue that they had, like, they haven't really hit on any draft picks in that position. Like Danielle Hunter
Christian Darrisaw has been really good, but
but at the same time he's one guy. You know what I'm saying? Like the thing that makes the Eagles on the defensive side, it's not just one guy. It's this guy. It's that guy. It's that guy. It's a collection. What makes Washington so good up front? It's a collection of guys. When you on defense, when you just have to work, hey man, and we stop this guy, we stop this one dude, we ain't got to worry about everybody else. So it's literally just one dude. Like if I'm the Minnesota Vikings, like it's a collection of everything. It's not just the front seven. Secondary's been questionable, right? Like it's like they have one playmaker at each level. And it's just not enough. And then they wonder why they can't get over that proverbial threshold, or they play somebody better and they can't get past them. That's why. Because where other teams have 2, 3, 4 playmakers on at each level, you just have the one. Like safety, Harrison Smith, right? Linebacker. I don't even know who the linebacker is for the team because I don't think Kendrick's still there.
No, he's a Charger now. We'll talk about that in free agency. But yeah, I mean the linebacker level. I mean Jordan Hicks, coming over from Seattle, I think 2 years ago, has been solid for them, but nothing legendary. And then Danielle Hunter has been a really good football player for this team
for a long time.
Drafted. Yeah, for a real long time. So he's a solid football player. I think I'm still very concerned about this Minnesota Vikings team in the trenches. I think Christian Darrisaw is one of the top 5 left tackles in all of the NFL. But I think when it comes to the rest of their offensive line, I think that leaves much to be desired. Ezra Cleveland's kind of been a project, hasn't really worked out at left guard. Ed Ingram's been just okay at right guard. Brian O'Neill's getting up there in age, but still a solid right tackle. Garrett Bradbury, obviously at center, it's been okay. Nothing great. And then the other side of the football, I mean, you lose Dalvin Tomlinson, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, but you don't really replace him with anyone that really any noteworthy. Really, you get Ross Blacklock in a trade last offseason. Danielle Hunter, I am still very much concerned about the trenches when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings. Like I think they still have a lot of work to do when it comes to the trenches of the football. And where is football won and lost? It's in the trenches.
I say it all. It's like everybody kill. Like quarterback's the most important position. No, it's not. It's the guys up front. Right? One weakness, like one bad spot up front, destroys your entire offensive line. I'm so serious. Like if you have a bad right guard or a bad right tackle or a bad left tackle, that literally throws everything off for the rest of the guys on that line. I don't care how good your quarterback is. If he has, like, we literally saw it in a Super Bowl. Pat Mahomes is the best quarterback in the game right now. What did he do with no offensive line? I don't know. Runs for his life and lost 31-9.
Yeah, and a game that was not even that close. Like
Not
they lost
close.
31-9, but that game was not even that close. Yeah, I'm still pretty. I'm still pretty concerned about the trenches. I don't think they've done enough to really address those issues. We'll see if they can overcome it with how dynamic this passing game can be at times. They're gonna need to rely on this passing game, and they're gonna need to rely on some really young corners kind of really step up. Andrew Booth Jr. in his second season is gonna have to step up. They're going to need Louis Cine in his second season to step up, and then they obviously signed Byron Murphy to be cornerback one.
Now, if you're a guy that's kind of like, if you're a young player that's kind of looking to make a name for yourself in the NFL, like now is the perfect time. Kyrus Tonga, like he got hyped when he got drafted here in Chicago, but he never. I think he got cut. Like we was on, hey, it's Tonga time. We was hyping that up, like
yeah.
So he's listed as the starting nose tackle for the Vikings. You want to make a name for yourself? Here's your opportunity. Marcus Davenport, right? Or what they want? They want a 3-4. So he coming in at the edge spot. I don't know what I don't have.
First round pick for the New Orleans Saints a few years ago. Never really panned out there in New Orleans.
Say, I don't have the numbers in front of me what he did for them.
So he had 9 sacks so 0.5 sacks last season, 9 sacks the season before. He's been relatively disappointing in 4 seasons or 5 seasons. He's had 21.5 sacks, and a guy who was a first round pick
so first round pick.
Texas and San Antonio. But I like him as a. We'll talk about it when we get to free agency, but I think he has an opportunity to really make a name for himself here in Minnesota with it all the opportunity in the world to. He's just not squander it, right?
Pretty much, just got to take advantage of the opportunity. Like,
so let's moving on from the trenches. Let's talk about a skill position player. Let's talk about Justin Jefferson, the reigning offensive player of the year. Do you think that Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football today? Last 3 seasons, 1,400 yards, 1,600 yards, and 1,800 yards in 3 seasons. It was on pace at one point last season to break Calvin Johnson's record, whatever that record is. I think it's like 1,900 and like 70 yards, something like that. Do you consider him the best wide receiver in football today?
It's hard to argue against him. That makes sense. Like if Justin Jefferson wanted to, if he personally came out and said, "I'm the best receiver in the game," it ain't like folks could be like, "Hey, bro, that's cap." Like, no, it's not. Like, it's he has a legit argument to say, "I'm the best receiver in the game." It's hard to find like one guy that's better than him. I mean, if you want to say Cooper Kupp, I'm
taking Justin Jefferson over Cooper Kupp. Nah,
Devontae Adams, you personally, that's fine. That's fine.
I think the Devontae Adams Justin Jefferson one's a little bit is closer, but I think I would still take Justin Jefferson over Devontae Adams. I just think Justin Jefferson's still young. He's only going to get better. Like he's still not. He's only like 24 years old. Like he just celebrated his 24th birthday last month.
Hey, what's his name?
Like he's not even in his prime. He's not even in his prime yet.
Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson.
I think I'd rather have Justin Jefferson. But I think you're
splitting hairs.
Splitting hairs. Like I think those two guys are so good. I think you can't go wrong with either one of those two guys. And
Chase or not Chase, Jefferson, Stephon Diggs. Like you can't. I don't think there's a. Like when it comes to the top,
I would rather have Justin Jefferson.
I think like when it comes to the upper echelon of the receiving class, I legit think all those guys have a fair argument. The Jeffersons, the Kupps, the Mike Evans. Like, hey, first off, Mike Evans has never had anything less than 1,000 yards in his career.
He's the first wide receiver in the history of the NFL. I think he have 9 straight seasons with at least 1,000 yards receiving.
That should put him in Canton alone.
I think he's a Canton. I think he may make a Canton anyway. Super Bowl ring.
Like
Yeah.
alone. But it's Justin Jefferson. It's gotten to a point where, hey, if you one on one that man, you already know what it is. Like
Even if you double cover him,
even if you double cover him, you already know what it is. But
that catch he made against Buffalo, like it was just literally like unreal. Like the catch he made against the Buffalo Bills to basically save that game for the Minnesota Vikings.
And they got
that's
screwed.
Like
and they got screwed that game. Like they should have won. That was enough. I think that was
they did win that game.
Oh, they did win that game.
Yeah.
No. So like what I mean, the game should have never went to overtime. Is what I meant. That game, because what's his name? Buffalo. I forgot the Buffalo receiver that caught the ball, but it wasn't a catch because the ball literally hit the ground, and they ruled it a catch for Buffalo to get in the field goal range. And I think Minnesota had already challenged something, so they couldn't challenge that, and that allowed Buffalo to get the field goal team on, kick the game time field goal, go to OT. Yeah, woo woo. He top 3.
Yeah, I think Justin Jefferson is certainly the argument. We talk about best wide receiver in football. I think you cannot say best receiver in football without having Justin Jefferson somewhere in that conversation.
Absolutely.
Moving on from the storylines, let's talk about their draft. First round pick obviously took Jordan Addison. Boneheaded decisions and all. Wide receiver out of USC should be a good fit there. Adam Thielen's now no longer there. They took Mekhi Becton, quarterback out of USC. Jay Ward, defensive back out of LSU. They just like to take LSU players, it seems like. Jacqueline Roy, defensive tackle out of LSU. And they took a quarterback to basically back up Kirk Cousins. Jaron Hill out of BYU. And Dewan McBride, running back out of UAB, to give them some depth at the running back position.
As Dalvin Cook is no longer there. Also, you said Blackman. You said Becton for Mekhi.
Oh yeah, my bad. I'm just.
I know, like we've
been talking about
Mekhi Becton for so long. It's just, it's just second nature. It just rolls off the tongue.
But yeah, Jordan Addison, he was at Pitt. He won the Blitnikoff Award while he was at Pitt. He was just okay at USC. Everybody thought he kind of like jumped off the stat sheet a little bit. Didn't have
Jordan
the best
Addison?
combine. Jordan Addison.
Well, he was like, what was it? He was a transfer dude from Pitt.
Yeah.
You said that, right? Transfer. Did he go to US?
Yeah.
So, hey, obviously, like, I mean, the whole notion of, hey, if you're good enough, they'll find you is absolutely true. It 100% is true. But we're not finna act like certain schools don't get certain spotlights over other schools. Would you rather be the wide receiver at Pitt or the wide receiver at USC?
Oh, USC. I don't think that's not even close.
It's not. USC has more televised games. They have the deeper history. They got the deeper rivalry. So, like, if you're USC, you're on TV. You have a good chance to be on TV. What is it?
Constantly.
Yeah. Like, you got USC Notre Dame. They play each other all the time. USC Stanford's always on TV. USC UCLA is always on TV. USC Oregon's always on TV. Like, yeah. No disrespect to Pitt, but
but I think they knew Adam Thielen was going to be walking out that door. KJ Osborne's been a solid wide receiver for them, but this is a guy that's going to step in and be an excellent route runner. Good hands. He ran sort of okay 40 time. 4.49. It's nothing to sneeze at. He had shorter hands than arms than people thought he had at the wide receiver position. But I think getting him at 23 is such good value, and people thought he'd be the number one wide receiver off this board.
You know who else got small? You know who else got small hands when they got drafted? Jamar Chase. I'm not worried about him.
Short arms.
Same thing.
Moving on to Blackman, pretty good corner. Played at USC along with Jordan Addison. Saw him in practice all the time. He also played in the Pac-12, where you saw a lot of high-flying offenses there, or whatever the Pac-12 is called now.
It's still Pac-12.
Okay, yeah. So, he had 94.3, highest in the Pac-12 of 95.3 tackle rate. Basically didn't miss tackles as a strong tackler for the Trojans last year. He's a solid football player.
Yeah, I have no issue with it. Yeah, I have no issue with Mekhi Blackman to the Vikings. Again, it's a
It for sure addresses an area of need. This team
Yeah,
is a team that didn't have really anything really to talk about when it comes to secondary. Patrick Peterson's not long gone, so yeah. And then they address the trenches. I mean, you add a cornerback safety who gives you versatility at the cornerback and safety position. You add a defensive tackle. Delvin Tomlinson no longer there. As you mentioned, Tonga time, maybe
Tonga
not the
time.
answer. Maybe not the answer there, defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings. You take a swing on a quarterback at round 5, and then you take a running back at a UAB. Probably was one of the reasons that they got rid of Dalvin Cook. This guy should give you some valuable measures there. He had 1,700 yards rushing last season in FBS.
That's a conversation we probably need to have for another day. The state of the running back in today's NFL is.
This is I would really like to have that conversation. So I'm of the aspect that I think a lot of young kids who maybe would have played running back when they were younger.
Oh, they are having that conversation. They are 100% having that
Are
conversation.
now or probably, if they have the skill set to do so, they're going to play wide receiver.
Oh yeah, they are definitely having that conversation
Because
100%.
there's not everybody who plays running back can play wide receiver, but if you can, the benefit of playing wide receiver as opposed to playing running back is like night and day.
Yeah, they are 100% having that conversation. They probably having that conversation.
But not everybody is going to be able to make that transition and be able to play wide receiver. But as far as this draft, I love at least the first 2 picks. I think they addressed areas of need. First 4 really, with very limited draft capital due to the TJ Hawkinson trade. I think they did the best they could here. This is probably like a B-, B.
I also think you kind of touched on it with Jordan Addison falling all the way to 23. I think for him to be there that late, especially with the premium that they put on receivers now, the fact that he was there into the early, late mid first round to the latter part of the first round, that's crazy. And it's not like Jordan.
I mean, and the guy won the Blishnikov. We're only like 2 seasons removed from him winning the award for the best wide receiver in college football.
So how do you that's the issue, and that's kind of the issue I have with that. So you're gonna hold his short. Oh, he has short arms, but he won the best receiver in college football award. Do you know? Think about that. Do you know how many receivers play D1 FBS college football? And he was the best out of all of them, but he has short arms. So you're gonna hold that against him, not the fact that he won the award.
The most productive. They don't really say best. It's the most productive wide receiver.
It's one and the same.
It's all, yeah. But I like what they did with the draft here. I think they did a pretty solid job of addressing area of needs. Kudos. 2 free agency. That's where most of this roster shakeup has really happened here. They obviously re-signed a bunch of their own guys, but they signed Byron Murphy away from the Arizona Cardinals to be cornerback 1. Marcus Davenport to give them some pass rushing edge help. If he can revive his career, it's a really good 1-year deal. Very little risk involved for the Minnesota Vikings. It's very incentive late as well. So the motivation there to play well is going to be high for Marcus Davenport. And then they stole Dean Lowry from the Green Bay Packers. And then their key departures: Dalvin Cook, Dalvin Tomlinson, Adam Thielen signed with the Carolina Panthers. Eric Hendricks is now a member of the Los Angeles Chargers, and Patrick Peterson, who was CB1 most recent season, is now in Los Angeles as a member of the Chargers.
Sorry about that.
They also brought back a couple of their own guys. They brought back Alexander Mattinson, signed him to a 2-year deal, bringing him back.
Now.
Yeah, he's a starter now for sure. Jonathan Bullard, defensive end, coming back. Brandon Powell coming back as well. They basically brought a bunch of their own guys back because they didn't have a lot of caps. They didn't really have a lot of cap space. The Dalvin Tomlinson loss is going to hurt. He was a very underrated player while he was in Minnesota. He goes to Cleveland on a 4-year deal worth about $14 million per year. That's a tough loss, and he'll be difficult to replace.
Yeah, it's whew, Byron Murphy, Marcus Davenport. Like, so I have a philosophy in free agency for every team. It's like for every guy you lose, you have to at least make like you got to match that. So if you lose one guy, you got to go out and get another guy. Like everything has to offset. Right now, you lost one, two, three. You lost five guys, but you were only able to bring in three.
Well, those are the guys, just the guys I put on the list. They also signed Brandon Powell, wide receiver that was on the Rams last season. Troy Reader played on the Chargers last season, played linebacker. Brought
Okay.
him back on a 1 year deal. They also brought Joquan Williams, cornerback out of that played for the Patriots last season. Um,
Mm,
I
okay.
just didn't necessarily think all of those guys are worth putting on a list. So they also lost Irv Smith Jr., who I didn't put on this list as well. Duke Shelley wasn't even good for them last season. Goes to
Ne-
the Las Vegas Raiders. So
Neither was Irv Smith Jr.
they lost Shannon, Chris Boyd, two corners. On top of Patrick Peterson, yeah. So I mean, they lost a lot of guys. I mean, Eric Hendricks, a staple in Minnesota for the last couple seasons. He now is in the Chargers.
like obviously, like Irv Smith Jr. Like if he is, if he is what they hoped he would be, you don't trade for T.J. Hawkinson. And yeah,
Yeah, it's true.
um, what's his name? Oh, I like the coach. I like the coach.
Uh,
Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell.
yeah.
I like that guy. I know he kind of caught hell when he got the job from like when he got hired for the job. That's another political conversation for another day. I don't have the energy for that. Um, the one thing I think at this point he is what's this year three? No, what year is this for
For,
him?
this
Kevin
is the second
O'Connell.
season. This is the
Second.
second season.
uh, So this is his second season. So I think he had you got to get guys that fit your philosophy. I'm not saying those other guys didn't. I don't know why they didn't bring back Dalvin Cook. That's just again conversation for another day. I don't get that. I don't understand that one. Adam Thielen, I understand.
I can't believe he's not already hasn't been re-signed, but that's
Stop.
also another
Resign.
conversation.
Another
Okay, yeah,
conversation.
like it's time. Yeah, we'll get into the running back conversation a whole nother time. But yeah, Dalvin Cook is going to be a tough loss. Alexander Madison has filled in admirably as top spots, but that's the point. He's been a fill-in. Like he hasn't
I
been the guy.
think I think the one that we're not talking about, I think the guy that they're really gonna miss is Thielen. You're asking a rookie and Jordan Addison, who's not off to a good start, by the way.
But
140 miles an hour in I forgot what speed limit
he was
the
on the
speed
highway,
zone.
so I think the highway was probably 75.
That's still double, bro. Like, yeah, you're an idiot. Like, did you not learn anything from Henry Ruggs? Like, I understand you weren't drunk, but you were still reckless. Like, reckless endangerment is still a thing, drunk or sober. So yeah, but Adam Thielen is kind of like he was what you call it. He was Mr. Reliable for them for Kirk Cousins. Like, hey,
Well, I think the emergence of KJ Osborne, they expect him to take another step, so they kind of made
that's
him
that.
expendable.
Hey, that's a lot of faith. That I'm one.
It's
I'm
true.
so
It's true.
serious.
It's true. But KJ Osborne was almost better than Adam Thielen last season. But yeah,
Ooh,
I think that the when it comes to free agency with a team that have very limited cap space, you're going to lose guys. That's the nature of the business. Dalvin Thompson's a tough loss. I like the fact that they got Byron Murphy. I like the Marcus Davenport signing. I like Dean Lowry. Based on Minnesota, I think this is a solid C when it comes to free agency and their roster shakeup. We'll see how things end up shaking out when it comes to the roster.
that's fair.
Moving on from the free agency roster shakeup, let's just jump right into the schedule. Let's talk about their first game of the season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield come to town. They come into whatever that stadium is called there in Minnesota. How do you think that game shakes out between Minnesota Vikings and Tampa Bay Buccaneers? First game of the year.
So on the week 2,
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think moving on to that, they got a rematch of a game that was also week 2 last year. That game was also at the Link, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. I don't know if we need to talk about this game all that much either. I think Philadelphia wins that game fairly easily.
Yeah, I just think Philadelphia has the guys in the secondary to contain the just we
And
saw it last year.
I also think they're going to run the ball extremely well, and it might be tough for a Minnesota Vikings team that's kind of trying to figure it out in the trenches still. Um,
Yeah,
One
so
of the one of the
one on
other
one.
great things about this Minnesota Vikings schedule is they all their really tough games are all at home.
We've seen that before.
Yeah, right.
Well, no, like you get a Tampa Bay team with Baker Mayfield still trying to prove he.
I'm not even talking about that
I
game.
know, I know. Like he's still trying. He's still trying to prove he belongs in this league. They're gonna hype that up as a tough matchup again because of the requisite pieces around Baker Mayfield. Right? Again, those that receiving core is still there. Right? That key pieces of that defense are still there, especially right at this point in time because it's week 1. Right? They're still there. Right? The
Yep.
only like the blemish is Baker Mayfield. And if history is doomed to repeat itself, it has been proven that just because Baker Mayfield has the requisite pieces around him to be competent, it doesn't mean that Cleveland's going to be good. Did he not? Again, you said it. We talked about Cleveland 3 years in a row having the best roster. What did they get with Baker Mayfield at quarterback? One playoff appearance. One
Moving on from
playoff.
there, let's talk about them. Los Angeles Chargers come to town. Going into Minnesota. TJ, how do you think that game's going to shake out? Chargers, Vikings.
I think they lose that one too. I got them at 1-2.
I
I
got.
mean, yeah, 1-2.
I'm going to agree with you on that, actually. I think the Chargers go into Minnesota, and I think they win that game. I have questions about the Chargers. We'll get into them when we finally get to that show. But the Chargers, I think they're going to be pretty good this season. They go to Carolina after that to go take on the Carolina Panthers. I think they get back onto the winning ways there, and I think they beat Carolina regardless of where the game is being played. TJ.
Yeah, I agree. 2-2. They get their second
Okay.
win.
And then, unfortunately, they have to go up against the Super Bowl champs. This game is in Minnesota, which could make it interesting for this matchup. But I think the Kansas City Chiefs win this game. I got Minnesota falling down to 2-3.
Yep. Oh, this the Chiefs. Oh my God.
After that, they go into Soldiers Field and take on the Chicago Bears. I think they get back onto the winning ways there, and I think if they off the schneid, I have them beating the Chicago Bears in Chicago.
Nah, they lose. They lose this one in Chicago. They lose this one.
After that, the San Francisco 49ers and whoever's going to be the starting quarterback for the Niners at that point in the season goes into Minnesota. TJ, how do you think this game is going to shake out?
I think they. I think they lose to the Niners. Just. I don't think they have enough of everything else. Like the one thing that we joke about with the 49ers, like they can't never keep a quarterback healthy. But the one thing they can say is that their quarterbacks never go above their limitations. They play within the system. They don't try to do they don't try to be extra. Is what I'm saying. Like they play within the system. Like they don't try they don't just say, "Hey, I got this guy. He down there somewhere. Let me try to fit it in this tight window with him surrounded by 3 dudes." It's like, nah, he's covered. I'm going to make this easy for myself, and I'm going to check down to this guy, or this guy. So, San Francisco for the W.
I'm gonna disagree with you. I think the San Francisco 49ers secondary I think is gonna be really tested in this game. Losing Emmanuel Mosley as we talked about yesterday. I'm gonna take Minnesota to actually win that game. After that, they go to Green Bay, take on the new look Green Bay Packers. First game between these two teams of the season. How do you think these two teams shake out, TJ?
How do you think these two teams shake out?
I'm taking Minnesota to actually sweep Chicago and Green Bay this season. I have them winning that game.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's faith. Hey, that's some faith. I understand it. Yeah, I think obviously the inevitable, that's the wrong word. The um the undeniable, there we go, is what we don't know about Jordan Love. By this point, this is game one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. This is game eight of the season for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know if it will be game eight for the Packers because I didn't do that show.
I don't remember either.
But by this point, that's game eight. That's basically 2 months. No, that's not Thanksgiving. You should what you call it? You should have an idea of what Jordan Love is.
This will be the seventh game for Green Bay.
So it's a
So they
game.
have a bye.
So is this their first game? Is this their first game out of the bye?
No. They go to Denver before the bye, and then they play Minnesota.
Okay. So the first. They go to Denver. So it go Denver by then or is it by Denver then Minnesota?
By Denver then Minnesota.
Okay. So okay, give me the Vikings. I don't feel good about it though.
I don't feel good about it. My prediction either, but I'm gonna go with it. After that, they got 2 games back to back against the NFC South. First, they go to Atlanta, take on the Atlanta Falcons, and then the Saints come here. How do you see these 2 games shaking out, TJ? Going to Atlanta and then New Orleans coming into Minnesota.
If they don't go to Magic City, Vikings win. I imagine you don't get that joke because Magic. I don't know. I don't think you know what Magic City. Do you know what Magic City is?
I do not know what Magic City is. I'm a little afraid to Google it.
If they don't go to Magic City, then get them. If they don't go to Magic City, get them lemon pepper Lou wings. Then Minnesota should come out on top. But again, I think it's just at the end of the day, you're gonna have to have your quarterback make a play, and I think Kirk Cousins can make that play versus Desmond Ritter making that play, or whoever's quarterbacking for the Falcons, because y'all love to bring up Taylor Heineke, whatever.
6-pack of Heineke. With that being said, I'm actually going to have them lose to Atlanta. I think Atlanta.
You have to die on that hill. You have no choice.
But I think if you have problems in the trenches, the worst team you want to see is the Atlanta Falcons. They have one of the best offensive linemen. They're going to run the ball down your throat. They also have a very good defensive line. Grady Jarrett's there. They got Calais Campbell now. That is going to be a tough game. I'm having Atlanta.
I ain't saying it's gonna be a cakewalk. I'm just saying.
But with that being said, I think they beat New Orleans in Minnesota. So I got them at 6-4 through 10 games.
I gotta have them at least 500. Do I? I might think I do, because I got them beating Atlanta.
Moving on from them, they go to Denver, take on the Denver Broncos, obviously at Mile High. How do you see this game shaking out, TJ?
They go to Denver. This is you said 2 games, right? New Orleans and Denver.
No, just so they. Okay, I picked them to beat New Orleans, so.
Okay. I think that's gonna be a good game. New Orleans and Minnesota. That's gonna be a good. Cause what's the guy? You got Justin Jefferson versus what's his name? Oh my God, Marshawn Lattimore, whatever you go. I don't know why his name was escaping me for a minute. That's gonna be tough. That's gonna be tough. Alvin Kamara, not in trouble, still there.
I still think he's going to get suspended, but at this point, I think he should be back, or whatever the suspension happens to be.
Well, don't you think if he was going to get suspended, they would have, announced it by now?
I don't know. I don't know, because he didn't. The charges weren't completely dismissed. He did plead guilty to something, or no contest to something.
No, they dropped everything, didn't they?
No, he for sure.
I legit could have sworn I messaged y'all saying
he pled no contest to whatever the lesser charge is.
Pleading no contest is not pleading no guilty. Am I right?
it means you're not contesting the charges, which means you're accepting them. It doesn't. You're not admitting. You're not
But then
admitting
the
your
charges
guilt.
got. But then the charges got
Yeah,
dropped.
the most severe charges did get dropped, but he still pled guilty to something. I don't like no contest or something. I don't remember what it was, because that's why he had to pay the fine, and that's why he had to pay. That's why you got to do community service.
Again, if the NFL was gonna do something to him, I think they
I
would have
still
done
think
it.
that they will suspend him for 6 games. But even with the 6 game suspension, he'll be back by this.
He'll be back by this point.
Yeah.
It's in New Orleans. No, it's at
This
home.
game
You
is
said
in
all the tough
Minnesota.
games. You said all the tough games is at home. Give me the Vikings. Vikings at home.
Moving on from there, they go to Mile High and take on the new look Denver Broncos. I actually think that they continue their winning ways here, and I think they go to Denver and actually beat Denver in Denver. I got them now at 7-4.
They go to Denver and beat Denver in Denver. I can see that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the other way around, but I can see that. Yeah, give me the Vikings. Until Russell Wilson proves otherwise. Yeah, give me the.
And then the game before their bye, the Chicago Bears come into Minnesota, and I think the Minnesota Vikings win 3 games in a row before their bye week. They beat Chicago.
I agree.
And then after their bye, they got 2 back-to-back games against AFC opponents on the road. First, they go to the Death Star in Las Vegas and take on the Raiders, and then they go to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. DJ, how do you think these 2 games shake out?
They beat the Raiders. They beat the Raiders, but they lose to the Bengals.
I'm going to agree with you on that. And then to wrap up the season, they play 3 games against division rivals. First, they go. Detroit comes there. Green Bay comes to town, and then they go to Detroit to wrap up the season on a game that could be potentially for the division. Of those 3 games, how many do you think Minnesota wins?
Detroit, Green Bay, Detroit. Do you see a world where they lose all 3?
I do not.
Wow. What? Do you see a world where they win all 3?
No, I do not.
Do you see a world where they win just one of these games?
No. I think that they win 2 of these games. I think they beat Detroit in Minnesota. I think they beat Green Bay in Minnesota. And then I think they lose the final game of the season against the Detroit Lions, which would make tiebreakers very interesting. When we did the Detroit Lions show yesterday, I have Minnesota finishing with 11-6. I have Detroit with 11-6 winner. If you watched our show yesterday, I'm not sure how tiebreakers would shake out. They both would have, based on my predictions, I have them with the exact same record, 11-6 for the Minnesota Vikings and Detroit Lions.
I mean, well, I think I got them. I ain't got them at 11-6 like you do. Both teams. I think they're gonna be in the same ballpark. Not like anywhere 9-10 wins. So 9-8, 10-7 for both. Either way, it's the same situation. It's the same predicament. I think the tiebreaker would have to be.
I mean, that tiebreaker might be that Atlanta game because I had Detroit beating Atlanta. I have Atlanta, them losing to Atlanta. So Detroit may win the division based on that tiebreaker alone.
It also comes down to what you call it, like divisional opponents, like how you play.
I have them with the exact same, like both sweeping the Bears and then splitting with each other. So I don't know how the tiebreakers would work, but I have the Minnesota at 11-6. I think that they'd be a fringe playoff team. I think even if they don't win the division, I think they're for sure a wild card spot team when it's all said and done.
Well, their saving grace is the rest of the conference is, and I'm being respectful here, is a joke. The rest of the NFC is a joke, right?
I mean, it's been like this for a few years. The NFC is very top heavy.
Not like this. Not like this. I mean, now,
at least the last 2 seasons has been like this.
No one's not really, because like nobody's ever really talked about it. Like this is yeah. You got one team from the NFC South where you used to have at least 2. It used to be Tampa or with Carolina when they were good, and the Saints. The Saints were the one were the one constant, and then the other 3 played, what you call it. We're gonna be here this year, like between the Falcons, Tampa, and
That's true.
Panthers.
That's true.
The NFC, you can count on at least two from them. Whether it be the Giants or whether it be the Eagles and the Cowboys, now you got to throw.
I think all
Now you got to throw the Giants in the, right now. You got to throw the Giants back in there, so they got three teams. And then you got the NFC North, where it's just Green Bay was so good for so long, and it's like, all right, Minnesota, they have a good year here and there, and we're talking about them. So, yeah, like it's like this right here is, hey, this is something else. Because I know for the NFC,
the NFC South, none of those teams are really all that good. Like
and we really just expecting just one team from that division to make it. You got the Falcons, sure. I got the Saints. So I have no faith in Tampa making the playoffs. I have no faith in Carolina making the playoffs. All right, Washington is Washington.
I think in the West, Arizona is probably going to be the worst team in the NFL. But we'll see how these ends up shaking out. We haven't done any of the NFC East teams. That's going to be our preview. Not next week, but the week after probably. We'll start with them. Next week, we start our AFC East teams, talking about the Buffaloes, the New Englands of the world. You don't want to miss that content. Thank you very much for checking us out here. And let us know what you think the record is going to be for the Minnesota Vikings. I have them 11-6. I have them as a playoff team. I think I like Minnesota this season, so we'll see what ends up happening. My name's David Huffman. Right there is Mr. TJ Hopkins, my co-host. And thank you very much for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And TJ, what do we do here at the Prime, my friend?
We bring the heat, and
yes,
the heat,
sir.
The heat is coming. Like I looked at the forecast for next week.
95 degrees a week from today.
Yeah, I looked at the forecast for next week, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not with that.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it either. But we'll get through it together, man. And I will see you probably on Monday. So have a good weekend.